Shalom to all. This is Erez Nevi Pana. It's a great honor to be part of this great panel on the narratives of soil. It's also a great opportunity to thank Wendy and Eliza for inviting me to speak about my experiences with soil. I would like to make a first forward jump back to my first introduction with this beautiful material. As a child, at my parents' plant nursery. In the middle of the city, my parents decided to construct a green bubble, their plant nursery. One can imagine a little child spending his time in a business. Me and my brother, we had to invent an imaginary word. This word was packed, it was noisy, it was colorful, and it was all based on the fact that we were collecting materials and tools that we found around us. You can also imagine we couldn't be playful with the plants as my parents were quite protective on them. Their wish was to sell the plants. So soil and water actually were the two materials that we were allowed to engage and play with. I have great memories from this period. Engaging with soil as a kid brought me later on during my master's studies at Design Academy Eindhoven to explore the possibilities of working with soil, this time from a designer point of view. I'm going to speak a little bit about Soilid, which is my first work with soil. It all started as part of a class. We were asked by our professor, Vincent de Rijk, which is the master of materials in the Netherlands. We were asked to invent a recipe. Actually, each student had to choose a specific material or a few materials which he want to mix, just like a chef, calculating the volume, the weight, and later on producing a recipe that will allow to duplicate the process. The main focus was produce something completely new. I decided to work with soil, a mixture that one can buy in a plant nursery. It's a mix of sand and clay and minerals, and this mix is quite ideal to the growth of plants. And basically in itself, it's a recipe that is being duplicated all over the world. And the idea of the globalization of soil quite struck me. I understood that there is a great potential in it, and actually there was. Later on, when I had my recipe, I could produce the objects everywhere around the globe. And so I did. Some objects were made in Israel, others in the Netherlands, in the United States. In each of these countries, I had to search for a plant nursery that sells loam. And the recipe worked perfectly, just perfectly, in each continent that I visited. In this project, I'm going to explain a little bit about the process. In this project, I mixed natural materials, exploring basically almost hundreds of combinations, little samples that were cooked and baked and fried, until I found by chance an interesting reaction in the mixture of soil, fungus, and sugar. Soilid, the name of the project, hints the materiality and durability of the outcome. A solid, baked soil. As simple as that. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm mixing the materials, leaving them overnight to rise, and then they're double in size in the morning. The next step after they're is molding and shaping the object using the Ferrargo. The mold is being constructed from wood, it can be made from plaster, and by placing the Ferrargo inside the mold, It gets the shape, and then one can bake it for a few hours in the oven. Of course, it depends on the size of the objects. The bigger the object it takes more time to be baked. The day after, one can open the mold and see the outcome. And the outcome is a strong, solid, almost structural organic material. It has the look of soil, but it also looked almost like bread. Decided to create a series of chairs as I wanted to expose the strength of the material. A seat has to hold the weight of a person, of course, and this could expose the strength of the material, but from a conceptual point of view, sitting on soil is what I wanted to achieve. Being connected to soil again. Let's think about a combination of a product and a material that they've never met before in one object. Solid was my first great success. It was welcomed by museums all over the world, by galleries, by curators. A combination of a chair or a stool with the basic materials would strike the design scene. The industries came just after the museums. BMW wanted to use it for a concept car, and the recipe ended at the company that brought the rights to use this recipe. I guess the success came thanks to the connection of human beings with soil as the ultimate manifestation, being united with Mother Earth. There is a specific context, but also a wider one. The soil is our base, I can say. It allows the trees to grow, and it allows us to eat the fruits of the trees. Think of the birds that soar above the soil and the insects that are living beneath it. As us, we all live in relation to soil, and this is our base. This project that originated from my memories as a kid at the plant nursery started growing into a wider context. And that's the power of materiality and design, I believe. They expose the extensions and connections beyond one border. We all sit, we all eat, we all breathe, we all walk on soil from the same planet. I would like to add a few lines about the design processes I conduct. As principles from the plant nursery came to be part from my approach to design. Beside the materiality like soil and other natural materials that is connected, I started looking at objects as if I look at the process of growing a plant. Growing objects became part of my identity as a designer. For example, growing mushrooms or salt crystals. The last project I did was made with banana plants from which I produced banana fibers, later on were woven into a series of bean bags. Growing loofah on the rooftop of my studio and using them for the bleach project, or growing silkworms for the vegan silk project. In a really close narrative is present in all, and one could direct it to my first experiences in the green bubble, actually. Today, to use the bare minimum in an object is a new path in my approach, which I'm trying to deal with right now. When I say the bare minimum, I mean in relation to the materiality and the use of energy in the production processes. Looking at one of my last projects, Crystalline, which is now presented at the second triennial at the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, Australia. In Crystalline, I try to use salt from the Dead Sea as a building material. Actually, this project started as my graduation project from Design Academy Eindhoven in 2013. I really wanted to go back home from the cold environment in the Netherlands, and I was looking for a specific project in Israel. And by traveling in in the area of the Dead Sea, I discovered a really interesting problem, I can say. Every year, there are 20 million tons of salt neglected in the evaporation ponds of the Dead Sea Works. The Dead Sea Works is a factory that collects the valuable minerals like potash and bromine from the water of the Dead Sea, and they neglect the salt. It's not economical for them to clean the salt, as if you think about that, the value of materials, if we speak about soil, if we speak about salt, for example, salt used to be one of the most sought after materials in the world. It has so much importance, and today it's being produced way faster that it's being consumed, and the prices are so low that the Dead Sea Works decided not to even try to sell it, and they are just neglecting it in the evaporation ponds. As a designer, I found the striking amount of 20 million tons of abundant material as a great opportunity for me. With Crystalline that you see in the images right now, I present a journey. It's a journey from water to land. Starting with a ladder emerging from the water, continuing with a small chunk of architectural element. Just like the soil project that started in a specific context and began evolving beyond its first context, now with a company that is owning it. So do the salt project, I can say, emerge from a specific problem in the Dead Sea, on the lowest point on Earth, becoming a relevant process in different countries where the scarcity of water led to the formation of desalination plants. As we all know, there are many countries around the world that scare water. We also know that the byproduct in the purification process of the water is NaCl. This salt finds its way back to our oceans. When salt is in mass in a specific place, it's toxic, and one could see the changes in the environments where salt pollution is formed. So we can see that the vision of salt architecture started at the lowest point on Earth and now can be applied in other places around the globe. I would like to conclude this talk with highlighting the concepts of connection and unity. If it's soil, salt, plants, or we as a whole, as designers, as human beings, as animals, we all explore on the same ground. We may speak different languages, but the personal experience, just like I had, can actually be a shared one. We must acknowledge that the consciousness unites everything and everyone. Thank you very much for joining, and shalom.